the skill of building teams. So if you're ready, type ready into the chat and we're gonna get right into it. DJ says ready. Gerald says ready. All right, let's go. All right. So a couple of key things. If our goal is to grow the agency so that we can remove ourselves from the day-to-day, so that we can have all of those balls actually be caught and carried across the finish line, step one is we have to map out our organizational chart. There's a great book by Michael Gerber called The E-Myth Revisited. Just drop E-Myth in the chat if you've read this book, because I think most smart business owners have read the E-Myth at some point, and it's an amazing book. And it really helps you to think about your position within your business, within your agency, isn't necessarily to be the person doing the websites and doing the SEO and doing all of the stuff that you do for your clients. If you do that, then you just got a job, right? You created a job for yourself and you're using the technician hat, right? And in the E-Myth, what he talks about is if you really want a business, then you have to separate yourself from doing the job and build a team, put the systems and the procedures in place. And one of the practical first steps, if we want to do that, is to map out our organizational chart. Figure out what are the key roles within this organization, who sits in those roles, what are the KPIs of those roles, and what do I sit in now versus what do I want to sit in the future? Because when you map the accountability chart out or the organizational chart, what's up, Drew? Glad to have you on here. You might be sitting in all the chairs, right? It may be that if you're doing sales and you're doing marketing, you're doing account management, maybe you're still doing some of the work, you're probably sitting in all of the seats, but it can create clarity for you so that you can have some strategic time where you're sitting in the CEO seat and you recognize you're coming above it, you're looking forward in the organization, and then occasionally you got to put back on the account manager hat. Sometimes you got to put back on the web dev hat, right? Sometimes you got to wear these different hats, but it can give you clarity that if the company's going to grow, you've got to put the right people in those roles within the organization. So that's what I mean when I say we're going to map out your accountability chart, your organizational chart. And so practically speaking, number one, we're going to identify the core areas within your agency, which is marketing, sales, client management, operations within operations, right? Whatever it is you do, website, SEO, Facebook ads, content, and admin, right? So those are the key roles within the organization. Next is we want to list the roles that are needed for each function, and then highlight 2 to 3 roles that have the biggest impact on freeing you up and helping you scale. And so I've got a great little template that I'll share with you guys on this. And this is a resource for those of you that are on here that you're welcome to use at sevenfigureagency.com/org-chart-template. We don't have to open it right now, but I'll just tell you that it has a Canva file as well as a Google Sheet that will help you map that, right? And if you read the book, and Drew just mentioned it, EOS, the Entrepreneur Operating System, they actually call this an accountability chart, which is who's accountable for these functions within the business. And there's a visionary, that's probably you within your business, that's looking out into the future. All right, here's where we want to go. Here's the services we want to provide. Here's like the strategic relationships we want to develop. And then there needs to be an integrator, which you could call a COO, but that's the person that actually implements the big ideas that you have through the team. And early in your agency, you're probably both visionary and integrator, but as you grow, as you scale, you're going to need to recognize you're probably a high quick start, low follow through person, and you need somebody that's high follow through, maybe low quick start, that can counterbalance and say, oh, we want to go into that niche. Oh, we want to do webinars. Oh, we want to roll out that new AI voice thing that can help actually bring that into the real world, put it into a project management system, and hold the team to account to get all of that stuff done. And so having the organizational chart or the accountability chart makes it possible to put all of that in place. And so, from there, you've got sales and marketing, right? The actual marketing of yourself, sitting on sales calls, asking for the business, right? You're probably doing some of that today. Operations and delivery. And this really is typically going to be the person that runs operations strategy and operations project management in ClickUp or Basecamp or whatever project management system you use to set the deadlines, to make sure things are getting done on time, to hold the team. Hey, you know what? This was due on Friday. What's going on? Let's make sure that that actually gets completed, to check the stuff off in the project management system. And then you've got the actual doers of those tasks, right? You've got web dev if you're building websites, SEO team if you're claiming local listings and doing on-page optimization and running, SEO strategies, paid ads if you're doing that, marketing automation, right? You have boxes for each of those key deliverable functions. And these individuals may be full-time on your company. They may be part-time at some level. They may even be third-party providers that you subcontract certain elements of the organization to. But having it on the chart makes it clear. Then you've got account management, which is managing the relationship with the clients, making sure that every client's getting met with on a monthly basis, that they're getting reports and they understand the value you bring to the table, that when they've got a question, there's a live person that understands what's going on, that understands their account, that can solve those situations. And initially, you're probably going to have one account manager, and then you'll probably have a couple of account managers. And then you may at some point want to have a launch coordinator. Like once you start to land 5 to 7 clients per month very consistently, and you've got enough for 1 or 2 account managers to be full-time, it makes sense to split that in and say, all right, let's have one person that just is completely focused on onboarding so they can create a world-class experience and really dial that in. That made a big difference for us from a retention perspective. And then you've got admin, right, which is paying the bills, booking travel, checking email, all of that fun stuff. And so whether it's you right now sitting in all of these chairs or in all of these functions, or you've got a couple of key leaders in the company today that you can slot in, having the chart helps you see, all right, here's what I need to have as the company grows, as I can afford to remove myself from these functions within the business. Typically, the question I get when I'm going through this is, well, who should I hire first, right? What's the progression that I would hire out these functions within the business? And I can say now, having worked with about 150 agencies that have gone to 7 figures, typically this is the order. First position is operations and delivery. So like I said, you don't want to give yourself a job. If you're still doing the websites and the SEO and the pay-per-click and all of the work that goes into actually delivering for your clients, you're not able to grow the business. You're not able to really innovate. You're not able to do anything within the company. And so operations delivery management was the first thing we removed. I mean, my agency started with me and my business partner, Dean, and he was doing the websites and I was selling, but then I was also doing on-page SEO. And we realized we need an operations person. So we hired an operations manager. And what we thought right out of the gates was, well, that's the only employee we're ever going to need, right? We're going to need one operations guy. He'll do everything, right? And it will be great. And we quickly realized, well, you know what? If we want to actually grow to 20, 30, 50 clients, then we're going to need someone to do the SEO and someone to do the paid search. But regardless, you want to get yourself out of operations as quickly as possible. All right. Position number 2 is account management, which is as the company grows and scales and you start to get clients, let's say you've got 10, 20, 30, 50 clients, all of those clients to be retained, they need to be met with on a monthly basis. They need to be checked in with. And if you're doing sales and you've already removed yourself from operations, right? Let's just say, going back to the accountability chart, all right, I got myself out of ops. I'm selling and I'm managing clients, which was my situation. Up to about $1 million a year at plumbing and HVAC SEO. I was selling and I was checking in with accounts, maybe even a little smaller than that, maybe more like 50K. And I realized, well, man, these guys, they need to be met with. This takes a lot of my time. I need someone that can take that off my plate for me so that I can focus on continuing to grow the business and to sit in this visionary role within the business. What I find is most agencies at about 17 accounts, if you're doing sales and account management, you're going to bottleneck hard, right? Because, either you're going to churn the clients or you're going to be toggling all the way back and forth between sales and account management way too often. And so that's where you probably need to make a decision at about 15 accounts it's time for me to hire the account manager, make the investment, draw down profitability, because we know every time we hire, our profit is going to dip a little bit, but we're making an investment in capacity so that we can go out and continue to grow the top line revenue and ultimately get that profitability where we want it to be. We find that, once you've got account management, the way we teach it, account manager just does client relations and they do client relation management. They don't actually do any of the work, right? You've got a team that does the actual website and SEO and paid search and all of that stuff. So they're just customer facing. They can handle about 25 to 30 accounts, at which point you need another account manager. So first would be operations. Second would be account management. Then third is personal assistant and or marketing support. So Buy Back Your Time says you would do this like first hire, and there's probably a case to be made for that. I can only speak to how I did it, and most of the agencies that I know that have gone through this path have done it, is that usually after we've got the account management piece in place, it's like, okay, I need to remove some of these low-level tasks that I'm still doing. So at this stage in the game, if you're still checking the failed billing payments, if you're still closing the books in QuickBooks, if you're still booking your own travel, if you're stressed out because you feel like you got to constantly refresh your emails and check your social and make sure that nothing's slipping through the cracks, this is like a $7 to $10 an hour task that you want to buy back your time from as quickly as possible. So there's a case to say you hire this first, but I usually see operations, account management, admin, finance, and then finally sales and marketing, specifically sales. Because as you get to about 7 figures, there's enough revenue, enough profit, and hopefully enough deal flow, because you're doing great marketing for yourself, that you're taking 15 to 20 sales calls every single month, which is leading to 5 to 6 new clients that keeps this launch coordinator busy, keeps this operations team busy. But it also takes a bunch of your time. And one of the most beautiful feelings in the world is once you've put a salesperson in place in your company and you really have an autonomous organization. You sit in the CEO chart and the CEO position, you probably got some type of integrator, operations director, and sales calls are being had. Clients are signing up on your monthly retainer. Launch coordinator is launching the account. Operations team is taking the ball and delivering great results for the clients with the websites, the SEO, the paid search. And then the clients are being retained because somebody's meeting with them on a month-over-month basis. This is when you truly have an agency, a business that can operate without you. And that's where you're able to say, hey, I want to reinvest my energy now back into innovation or back into business growth or back into acquisitions, or say, hey, you know what? I want to take that time and use it however I want. I've got 2 kids. I want to take travel. I want to do those things. And you can have that autonomy, or you can shift gears to other businesses. I can tell you a couple of examples of agencies that have gone through this track and kind of made strategic decisions to use that time to do whatever they want to do. One great example of this is Brian Stearman from Lawn Care Marketing Mechanics. Grew his agency to 7 figures, put this team in place, and just decided he wanted to live his life with his family. And that's where most of his energy, most of attention goes. Another great example of this is Alan Hillsberg, which works in funeral homes, grew to multiple 7 figures, put his team in place, and then saw an opportunity in another business. And that business was aquamation, which is like literally cremation for animals with water. You don't know the details, but he was able to say, hey, I've got this business running. It's producing great revenue and profit. It's continuing to grow. And he was able to shift his focus to a passion project. So any questions on this? This is just step 1. We've got to map the accountability chart, get clear on what those roles are, what positions we need to hire for. Any questions you guys want me to answer on this before we go to the next piece? Post it in the chat. Let's see. I did see one question. Rudy says, the concern I have is on late in QC, where the team does the same so many times that they check off the checklist, but don't actually do the QC correctly. I've lost at least $250K in revenue per year because of this issue, which ends up having us let go of these team members because they can't afford. Okay, so there's a QC issue, right? This is a training issue, right? If you've got good systems, you've got good procedures, you've got all that stuff dialed in, you put the team member in place, you have them do your thing. if they start to drop balls on delivery, then you and or your team need to go back and train, right? And so you need to have scorecard metrics. So in operations, it sounds like that's where the issue's happening. In operations, there would be some type of scorecard for like web dev or SEO. And if they're failing, you'd catch that. You'd bring it to IDS. You do a one-to-one with that person on the team, and you'd coach them up or you'd coach them out, right? If you catch it too late, and sometimes bad habits form, sometimes it's too late in the game and it is what it is. But if you catch it, you can really solve those types of problems. Got to 600K, but it didn't last too long, says Rudy. Well, no, I'm good. Yeah, as promised. Ashley, how do you find the right people and what do you pay? Okay, good. We're going to get into that in a minute. Awesome. What about best practices for training, onboarding new staff? Perfect. All right, guys, you guys are asking the questions, and that's exactly where we're headed next. All right. So these are the key positions that we want to hire for. Are you guys still seeing my screen? Just type screen if you're still seeing my screen. Awesome. All right. So we know what the roles are. And in order to figure out what we can afford and who we can hire next, there's a whole process around, well, let's figure out how much revenue there is. Let's look at our profitability. Let's calculate our buyback rate. And sometimes you can't afford to do it next, right? You can't afford to hire that next person. And that's a conversation for another topic, right? Assuming you've got the financial resources, the next step would be to pick that next hire. If it's ops, then it's ops. If it's account management, then it's account management, and hire, right? And so this is the seven-figure agency hiring process where we're going to do prep and promotion, right? Well, let's make sure we're clear. What's the role that I'm hiring for? What's the job description? What are the KPIs? And this is mission critical. Like, how do we know if the person's winning or losing if we don't have a number or a dial that we're tracking against? And then job posting and hiring criteria. So that's getting ready to do the job. Then we're going to do vetting, which is different for every role. It's going to be different for account management than it is for than it is for like a web designer, because there's different things you're going to be looking for. But we want a process to vet and know that we've got an A player that we're going to say, okay, that's the person. Then we're going to do our interview process, which may be live on Zoom. It may be more of like a Slack-based interview, depending upon the situation. I'll talk about the various situations as we go. Candidate evaluation. So we think we've got somebody good. There's some very specific things we can check for in the process to make sure we actually get the right person. And then onboarding, right? Onboarding. All right, you're the person, you're in, let's get you started. So this is the hiring process that we want to take new people through. How much do we pay? And there's lots of debate on this. Do we want to pay for the cheapest people that can do the job conceivably? Or do we want to pay at the higher end of the price scale? I studied closely, obviously, like most of us, Alex Hermosi, big fan of Qasim Aslam from Solution 8, and they make a really strong case for finding the high water mark for what it is. So I'm looking to hire an account manager. If I hire in the United States to be the high water mark, I'd have to pay $90,000 a year. If I'm willing to go international, maybe like South Africa, Latin America, Pakistan, then I could probably pay high water mark $40K and be the very top at what I do. What they would suggest is you find the very best in whatever industry, you figure out what the high water mark is, and you pay 10% above that. That way you're attracting the very best talent and talent that's going to stay. Because a lot of times we can get talent and then they'll look around the corner and be like, well, I could make a lot more money somewhere else. And there's not a lot of reason for them to stay, right? So if you're at the high water market, now you're getting the best talent and you're getting them to stick around. What their experience is that you don't get a 10% increase by paying 10% above the high water mark. You get like a 10-time increase because the best of the best, the true A players, they provide exponential outcomes within your organization. And so, in today's market, the way we operate at Plumbing and HVAC SEO at $7 million per year, this is our approach. I will tell you, when I was $500,000 per year, $1 million per year, I didn't have that luxury, right? There was revenue, there was costs, there was a need for me to pay my own salary and to pay for my business partner salary. And so we hired the right out of high school, right out of college age, lowest minimum wage, driving to Miami. And we train them up, right? And we poured our sweat, our tears, our energy into those folks. And if that's the path that you're going to need to do, then you're going to need to invest the energy, right? You're going to need to train those people and know that if you don't increase their compensation after a year or 2 years, they're probably going to be able to go get a job somewhere else paying significantly more. And so I understand, like there's a balance there between we're growing. I'd like to get the best, but I can only afford to do so much. We were hiring in Miami. So our office is in Miami. We had a big office in Doral. And that was our play. When COVID happened, we wound up going virtual because like all of our offices in Miami were closed. And we embraced the idea of virtual talent, right? Hiring the best regardless of where they happen to live. That opened up a lot of opportunity for us to get better people, not have to pay so much, more flexibility, not driving to an office every day. And that's worked really, really well for us over the last 4 years. And we've hired a lot of account managers in South Africa. We've hired a lot of web dev and SEO team in Pakistan and India. And so, if you can hire internationally and you can, not say, I want to find a $3 an hour person and, you're going to get what you pay for, or rather say, hey, I will pay $20 an hour for somebody in wherever India, if they're the best and they're going to be able to deliver oversized results for our clients and they're going to be super happy at that amount. Let's see, Eric, how much should you be making before hiring and outsourcing? I mean, it really depends upon how much money you have in the bank. It depends upon how quickly the organization is growing. There's a great, let me see if I can pull up this resource for you. This it? I'll find it for you. There, like it just helps you calculate your buyback rate, which is how much money you're actually making within the business right now, and helps you make that decision. Like, can I afford it? So remind me at the end. I'll make sure to pull that up for you because that'll help you kind of make that decision. Philippines. Okay. Rudy says, I thought it may be local due to English standards because that was part of the QC issue as well. Now, it's not the country or the region, right? Like you could say, oh, I tried to hire somebody in Pakistan and they didn't do a good job. Well, you probably didn't hire the best of the best in that region, where if you had, you would have gotten somebody great that could absolutely do the job. So we're to hire, North America, internationally, South America, Latin America, Philippines, India, Pakistan. This is where a lion's share of our talent exists. North America, keeping your eyes open to Canada, right, which is a great place to hire. As members, and some of you guys on here are members, I appreciate having you guys on here. This is more like a public session, but what we provide to our members is a document that is the key positions as you scale. So each of those roles, we've got a document that says job description, job posting, hiring criteria, onboarding. I'm not going to give that out as a free resource because we give that specifically to our member base. And if you decide you want to become a member of Seven Figure Agency, this is a great resource that will really help with this process. We've also got some great ChatGPT prompts that like, okay, you're the hiring director for a digital marketing agency using the who method. Help me write a job description for this post. Help me write, Jason says worth joining. Absolutely. Help me write the job posting. Help me write the KPIs for this role. We give you that and prompts in case you happen to wind up against a role that you need help with. So we talked about the hiring process a little bit. We talked about the organizational chart and who you might want to hire for next. What's your next hire? If you think about it in your current situation, whether you can afford to do it today or not, who is the next hire in your company? And while you guys are filling that in and actually writing it into the chat, I'm going to try and pull up that resource for you guys. Okay, let's see. Rudy needs a marketing assistant. Ashley needs web dev. Okay. So we'll talk a little bit about pre-screening for those roles. Gerald's going to hire for an account manager. Amazing. Alejandro, paid ads and SEO. Michael needs a sales guy. Okay, awesome. Fantastic. I want to make sure what we're doing here is practical and we're not just, talking theory. Oh, maybe at some point I'll, hire for this type of thing. But like we're actually going to apply some of what we're thinking about today to a very specific function within the company. All right, hold on one sec. All right, I'm going to put this in chat. I think this is a cool resource to have. Since it came up in chat, in questions here, I'll share this resource. I don't want this shared with the replay, wherever that replay sits. This is just for like the people that are on with us live. So I'm going to put this in chat here. So this is like a member specific resource, but I'll just kind of walk you through this. So if you're trying to figure out what you can afford and how you can afford to hire that next person, how many of you guys have read Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell? If you haven't, I highly recommend it. Really great book. I'm a big fan of Dan Martell. I'm part of his coaching program and world as well. But this is a resource. The thinking behind it came from that, right? So you figure out like what your current income from the business is, and then you divide that by 2,000 hours. That gives you an idea what your hourly rate is. And then if you take that hourly rate and multiply it by 4, or divide it by 4, that gives you an idea what your buyback rate could be and what you can afford, right? And so if that buyback rate now is only like $10 or $15, then you're going to be limited to, international talent potentially. If your buyback rate is $30, $50, $100, then there's really no role you can't afford to hire for. So doing that process is super valuable. This exercise right here is kind of will help walk you through like that next key hire that you wanna hire for, and then this is a time and energy audit. So if you're ever stuck and you're like, man, I'm spending so much time, but I don't know where my time's going, this time and energy audit will help you get clear. All right, this is where my time's getting stuck and I'm not using, the highest and best use of my time as a leader in this business. I'm down here and, creating content or social posts, or I'm doing administrative errands, to get you clear on what that next hire should be. So bonus resource for those of you that decided to participate live. So hopefully that's helpful. All right, we all know what the next job is, right? And we're gonna use ChatGPT, or we're gonna use the resources if you're part of the membership community to, all right, here's the job description, here's the KPIs, here's the role. Next thing we wanna do is promote that and get it out in front of the people we wanna hire. And there's certain roles you might wanna just use a recruiting service to help you with. And in 7-figure agents, we got some great recruiting providers. Like if you're looking to hire account managers, Brad Ferris has been fantastic from Agency Growth Team and helped us hire most of our account management team in South Africa. If you're looking to hire creative people to do websites and SEO, John Hanea from GoStaffy is great at finding that kind of talent at affordable rates in Colombia. And if you want more like marketing support, people that understand high level, people that can kind of do the administrative work for you, even like appointment setters and lead follow-up people, RepStack has great talent that you can get in Pakistan. So sometimes it's easier just to find someone that is great at placing those types of people than trying to hire on your own. But if you're going to hire on your own, first place to post is your own personal profile, right? People that may already know you, people that already have a relationship to you, have a kid, have a brother, have an uncle, have a friend that they refer. A lot of our talent in our company came from that word of mouth type introductions, because the best people usually already have a job, right? The people that you want to hire are hardworking, diligent, high follow through. They're not on a job board because they're working somewhere. However, if they get introduced to an opportunity that is exciting to them by a friend, by a family member, you can pull that talent in, and circumnavigate or circumvent the job boards. So don't forget to send an email to your email list, to post on your personal profile, to reach out to your friends and saying who you're looking to hire. But Indeed is the go-to board for United States Career Builder, LinkedIn, if you're hiring again, those are great for, international. If you're going to do, more, if you're looking more for like, I think somebody said a web dev, then posting right up on Upwork is a good place to find talent. Drew says, hiring is great, but make sure you got a process and a system ready. Yeah, for when those people get there. Absolutely. Yeah, don't just drop them in and hope for the best. We're going to talk a little bit about onboarding, training, accountability mechanisms, because that's mission critical. I personally, I like to shortcut the vetting process for hiring by using a video application. So if I'm going to get 100 applicants, especially for an account manager, sales, appointment setter role, until I hear their voice, until I see how they communicate, I don't know anything. So I'm just looking at resumes that don't tell me anything. I like to say, hey, we've got an interview, a video-based application process. Click the link, record a video, answer these 3 questions, and then I get a sense of their tonality. I get a sense of their environment. I get a sense of their professionalism, and if they're lazy or not, like somebody that at least takes the initiative to record a video and follow the instructions is somebody that is probably worth the time. And if they sound good on camera, then I'm going to meet with them and do an interview and take them through the full interview process. For other roles though, like if it's a web dev or it's a SEO person, having them do a video may not even be that relevant, right? So having them do something more like, hey, I read the instructions in their email subject line. That way they stand out and they show that they're high follow through. And I always ask what their salary expectations are. If you're interviewing in the United States and you're recruiting off of LinkedIn or something, sometimes the expectations are so far outside of reality that I don't want to get excited about you, do an interview and realize, I was thinking about paying you 50 and you're saying you want 120, right? It's like, all right, let's catch that early in the process. So this is like what a video interview process would look like. Indeed has this built in directly. If you use a third-party job board, you can use Video Ask, and it's literally like, hey, thanks so much for your interest in the web development role within our organization. We do a video-based application process. First question I'd like you to do is hit the record button here on the side and tell me about yourself and why you are interested in a role with our organization. And then they record that and say, okay, great. Tell me a little bit about your experience. And they record a little video about that. Ask logical questions that match to the role. Don't ask too many, right? Because you just want to get a sense if they've got communication skills. And then I usually last question, awesome, thanks so much for sharing your interview here, just so I know what are your salary expectations. And then they answer that on the video. And out of 100 people, probably only 10 are going to take the time to record the video, but that's letting the cream rise to the top. That works really, really well for us. For more project type work, websites, SEO, where how they communicate isn't that big of a factor. It's more, can they actually do this job? Can they actually do the job well? Is to give them a test project in advance. And Qasim Aslam explains this brilliantly. I'll send a video over if you guys want, the way he does it. And we've always done it this way at Plumbing and HVAC SEO, but the way he explained it was really good, is where you offer to pay them for a small project, send the money, and then wait for them to show the initiative and say, hey, I got this, but what am I supposed to do? What are the details? Let them set the time frame on how long it's going to take. This gives you a true way to get them to see how they interact, to see how resourceful they are, to see if they can actually do the thing that you're wanting to hire them for. And it'll be a small project, like a $50 to $150 project test. And if they do well and they communicate well and it seems like they can actually do the job, well, now you actually have a player. And regardless of how good they were on the interview, it really doesn't matter, because it really matters in this scenario. Can they do the job, and can they do the job well? Client-facing roles, I find that doing a group interview is great. So if we do a video application for an account manager and we get, let's say 15 applicants and they all sound good, rather than me doing 15 one-to-one interviews, I'll do a group interview Thursday at 3:00 and bring them all in and do it around the horn. You get to see how they interact in a group environment. You get to hear how they kind of raise up versus competition. And it gives you a really clean way to look at a lot of applicants on Zoom and select somebody that's going to be a rock star versus like your energy's off on Thursday and you're doing one-on-one applicants. Someone meets with you on Thursday, but another meets with you on Tuesday. Your judgment is going to be in a different place. Okay, cool. Hopefully, let me know how we're doing. Is this helpful? I mean, I know I'm getting into a lot of details here on this, but helpful. If it is helpful, let me know in the chat. Super helpful, Jared. Okay, good. Admins. When you hire your admin, I found any admin that I've hired that's checking my email, booking my travel, doing behind the scenes, most of my communication with them happens on Slack. So I'm not on Zoom with them. I'm not going to be meeting with them in person. And so it's more important to me how responsive they are on like a messenger platform like Slack or Facebook Messenger or even Upwork chat. And so I think I learned this from Nate from he's got a training on hiring VAs, but the concept of this worked extremely well. And so I'll find a good candidate through one of those platforms and say, hey, look, let's do a Slack interview. Do you have some time to chat now? And I'll actually do my full interview process on Slack, ask them about their work environment, ask them about their internet connection, ask them to add an image, ask them why they're interested in this role, talk about the core values and why I want to hire, what I'm looking for in this type of position. And you can get a pretty good vibe as there's somebody on the other side that's intelligent, that's quick to respond, that has decent communication skills. And I found some great talent, doing this. And when I tried to force them through a traditional interview process, just maybe there was a communication barrier, maybe there was, like just a weird vibe on Zoom, didn't matter because I wasn't going to interact with them in that way anyways. And I would have definitely probably hard passed on a couple of the people that have been amazing A players in our organization in these types of roles. So just some interview tips there on finding good candidates. I've got a slide here talking about test projects for the various roles you might hire for. Last tip I'll say on candidate selection, and this is probably the thing that had the biggest impact on us hiring great candidates and just change the game in our ability to keep great people in place. And that is pre-hire assessments. That is, meet with the person, do the interview, get a good vibe, seems like a good fit. Hey, before we move forward, I'd like to have you do a Kolbe assessment. And this is an assessment that will cost you $55 to administer through wherewithal.com. And it takes them like 5 minutes to fill in. And it comes back and it tells them what their action modality is. And it's going to say whether they're high fact find, high follow through, high quick start, high implementer. And what I did over the years, I hired people that I met with in person because we were in Miami. They had a good personality. They seemed articulate. And that was my main hiring criteria. And I would get somebody in and 2 to 3 weeks in, they were nothing like I expected. They didn't actually do the job in the way that I would have thought they would have. And what I realized was I was hiring people like me most entrepreneurs are very high, quick start, right? Up here, smart, quick off our toes, say the right things, but low follow through. And like we want to move, shiny object syndrome, move to the next thing, forget what we said yesterday and just moving on with our lives. And so what I look for when I hire is somebody that's high fact find, high follow through. And if they have these two things and they seem like a good fit, like you still have to have the skills, this makes a big difference in their likelihood to show up day in and day out, to do redundant tasks and do them well, and not flake out on you 3 months in, 6 months in, but really be loyal and stick with it. If you didn't take anything from today's presentation and you just learned this and said, hey, I'm going to do a Kolbe assessment. I'm going to look for this in my account managers, in my operations team, in my administrative support. It could make a huge difference in your ability to hire the right people. So just type Kolbe if you'll do some Kolbe assessments to help you, because a $55 investment could save you tens of thousands of dollars in a wrong hire. Very cool. And, over time, and part of what we give you in our key positions as you hire is what's the right psychological profile for each of these roles. Because hiring a salesperson is a little bit different psychological disc than a operations person, than an account manager. And so kind of knowing what you're looking for in advance and having those cheat codes makes a very big difference. And then, as Drew mentioned, like, yeah, it's all great to hire. It's all great to know we need somebody, but we have to think through in advance. Well, if I'm going to hire that account manager, how am I going to onboard them and make sure they feel like, hey, it's a legitimate company and they've actually got payroll set up and they've actually got my email account and my Slack and they've got all the tools ready to go and they've got a training for me to plug into so I know what my job is. I know what my expectations are. And then you've got a process to lead the team on an ongoing basis with your meeting rhythm, with your check-ins with them on a quarterly basis, with your coaching and improvement process. All of that, we have training and resources for as part of Seven Figure Agency. Happy to answer any questions on that part, but this is specifically the big picture on you want to grow your team. These are the key things you want to be thinking about to hire great team members. So in the hiring process, we want a clear job description, use platforms like LinkedIn, Indeed, niche job boards. Recruiting services can be an amazing shortcut. I know a lot of us want to avoid recruiting services, but I remember I was watching Mark Cuban be interviewed, and the person asked, like, what would be your greatest shortcut for finding great talent? And he said, use recruiters, right? Like, you're not in the recruiting business. Like, you're not doing this all day. You're not hiring and looking for this type of talent, and you don't have the acumen for it necessarily. Recruiting companies, literally, that's all they do all day. They hunt for talent. They know how to ask the questions. They shortlist it. You pay them a premium either to place the person or on an hourly wage on an ongoing basis. But if they can condense that process for you and get you the right person in the seat versus you guessing and getting wrong people in the seat over time, their service is worth its weight in gold. And I kind of embraced that concept. And again, almost all of our account managers, our first 3 teams of account managers that have iterated over the years and moved on and moved up, were hired in-house. Like, we placed the ads, we did the interviews, we selected, we put them in. Our last batch of interviews, last batch of account managers, which is, we've got a team of 7 account managers, we all hired through Brad Ferris, right? And it was just because he could do the shortlisting, he could get the talent, he had access to the talent pool in South Africa, and it's worked exceptionally well. So don't sleep. The only point of that story is don't sleep on recruiting services, right? There's a place to just say, I'm not going to go into the weeds on this. I'm going to find somebody that can do it. I'm going to pay them a premium, and they're going to help me shortlist. All right. Number 3 is we're going to delegate with confidence. So we looked at our accountability chart. We knew what the roles were within the company. We ran through our buyback rate. We picked the candidate. We posted the job. We got clear in the position. We got the candidate in. We onboarded them. Really important though is that you understand your responsibility as a leader and how you delegate matters. Rudy, I'm not calling you out, but you mentioned, I got these people in place and I thought they were going to be great, but then after a couple of weeks, they started dropping balls and the QC wasn't there. There's a high chance that you didn't delegate. You probably abdicated, which means you said, hey, I need this done, and you handed it off, and you checked in a year later and you realized, oh, they're not doing this right. And now you got a big problem. And I'm not saying that's necessarily the case, but I did that a lot, right? I did that a lot over the years. So there's a couple of leadership principles that can make a huge difference. Number 1 is 10-80-10. And the idea behind 10-80-10 is you're going to need to spend about 20% of the time with that new person or that person in that role to help get them set up. And so the idea would be you spend 10% on the front end. All right, here's what I'm looking to get done. Here's like what the expectation is, what this is going to look like when it's done. And then you give it to them. You say, okay, are you clear on what we're looking to do? Do you feel like you have the resources to go and run with this? And they're like, yeah, I think I can do it. And you let them take it 80% of the way, right? Let them go do their thing, figure it out, implement, try things, fail, do what they're going to do. And then you need to come back at the end with the additional 10%, which is just to come back and say, hey, how does that look? Is that right? Is that what we had in mind? Is it getting done? Do we have the right tracking in place? And using this 10-80-10 can make a big difference. Do they want it? Do they get it? Do they have capacity? Exactly, Drew. Make sure they understand what's going on and then use the 10-80-10. I made this mistake for a long time in my agency. because high quick start people, like all of us are, we want to hire and we want to just move on. But you've got to come back and add that extra 10% to make sure they get it. The other thing when it comes to leadership is the 1-3-1. And what usually is going to happen is you hire new team members. And if you are leading them correctly, they're coming to you, right? They're coming to you and saying, hey, what about this? Or, hey, I've got this question. Hey, I don't know how to do that. And you get bogged down in got-a-minute meetings and them asking you every question. Type me if you feel this sometimes with your team, where it's like you have to answer every question. And it's like, oh, well, I could have just done it myself. Would have been faster if I had just done it myself than to try and explain it to you for every little question that you have. 1-3-1 alleviates that. Because what you say is, all right, rather than you bringing me something and telling me I have to figure it out, come to me with a 1-3-1, which is one very specific problem. And I want you to come up with 3 potential solutions. Like, I think we could do this, this, or this. And then one recommended thing. It was like, if it was up to me, this is what I would do. When you train your team, whenever they come to you and you say, hey, I want you to do a 1-3-1 for me. The first couple of times, they're going to get much clearer. They're going to be like, okay. And they're going to come to you with a 1-3-1. You're going to be able to help them much easier. Before long, when you send them back with a 1-3-1 like 2 or 3 times, just having a narrowing process like that in place, they figure it out on their own. They start to become resourceful. They start to figure things out. And so be sure you're using the 1-3-1. Gail says, do you provide a detailed step-by-step format for them to follow, or just some basic information? I think just what I explained right there, if you just say, hey, look, I want you to come back with a 1-3-1. I want you to come back with one specific thing you've got a problem with, 3 potential solutions, and what you would recommend. And then we'll meet and we'll figure that out, right? That's all the detail you want. If you want to put it into a document or do a training with your team about it, you certainly could. The next is having playbooks, right? You want to have step-by-step overview playbooks of all of the key functions within your business. And the new playbook method, really, a lot of this is directly from Dan Martell's Buy Back Your Time method, is you've got all the key areas within the business, and then you've got a Google Doc or some other mechanism, and there's a Loom video or a video, you doing it, and a checklist of like, what are the steps to get this done? And this, if you've got in place for each of the key areas within the business, and then you empower your team that says, hey, this is your playbook. Now you're going to be the one to update the playbook and modify the playbook and keep it up to date. Then you've got living, breathing documentation within your organization of how things are done, right? And if somebody has to leave or somebody's going to move up in the organization, which hopefully happens all the time, it's easy to place that next person. It's easy to train that next person. And it's easy to deal with those QC issues, right? Because you've got a Loom video that says how to do it. You've got a detailed checklist with all the steps. And then once they're capable, you've got a very basic, like, here are the main 3 things. Like, did you at least do these main 3 things? And that new playbook method can be very, very powerful in your process of leadership. And the last thing I'll say is you have to make sure you train your team, right? You can't just put them in place, train them up once, and then move on with your life. If you're having frustration with your team, oh, this isn't getting done right, oh, they dropped the ball on that, and you're frustrated, that's an indication to you that says, I need to go back and train that individual. I need to go back and train the entire group on how I want them to behave, on how I want them to do that particular thing. Don't just be frustrated they're not doing it. Train them. Get them on Zoom, walk them through it, and help them understand what you need them to do in order to keep their jobs and to do it right. Drew said, did this today. Made a little video showing how to do something, adding a new user to Google Workplace, got the transcript, and got into ChatGPT with a prompt, written SOP, sent it to 2 people, never have to do it again. Amazing, Drew. Yeah, that's exactly it, right? We want to create those playbooks and take it off of our hands. So action steps here: create the lists of things that you handle, develop SOPs or playbooks, and then trust your team and provide feedback, right? You have to have feedback loops for this stuff. 2 meetings that I recommend you have within your business at a minimum is a weekly all-team meeting, and that's a time for the entire team to come together. Hey, here's what's going on. have some type of positive focus. What's going on? What's going well? What did you do this weekend around the horn? And then, hey guys, what are our top 3 things you're focused on this week, right? That creates teamwork. It gets everybody on the same page and it gets everybody into flow. The other meeting you want to have is a level 10 meeting, which is an EOS concept where the entire leadership team gets together for an hour and 30 minutes. It's a 90-minute meeting, and you get into the scorecard metrics and you find what's off track. You get into the to-dos from one week to the next, and you IDS. You identify problems, you discuss, and you solve. And when you have that meeting rhythm, you're seeing your team. Your team has a place to get feedback. They have a place to improve. They have a place to be trained up and a place to move problems forward. Until we had EOS and level 10 meetings going in our business, it was constant got-a-minute meetings. Oh, hey, Josh, this is a problem I have right now. Can we meet about this? Because they didn't have a parking lot to say, oh, I know on Wednesday at 10 o'clock, I'm going to be able to see Josh. I'm going to be able to bring up this issue. And so having that rhythm gives a place to park and move those things forward within your business. And if you're unfamiliar with EOS, read the book Traction by Gino Wickman. And then the system that they explain in that is called EOS, the Entrepreneur's Operating System. And then build repeatable systems. Right? I could talk for hours and hours on this. I'm going to keep it really, really simple. And we want to document those key processes: onboarding, reporting, fulfillment. We want to use a tool like ClickUp or Asana. As members, we give you our ClickUp template. There's a great training that Aiden Silver's put together that basically takes the key deliverables and how to structure it in ClickUp to manage it correctly. And then you've got to review, improve, and update your systems on a regular basis. So I know I'm a little bit over the hour mark. Sometimes I get long-winded. I'm very passionate about this topic. But in recap, like 4 key steps, we've got to map out the org chart. We've got to find the right people with a really nice tight hiring and placement process. Got to delegate with confidence. And then we've got to build those repeatable systems into the business and into the operations. The workbook we've got for this that goes along with it is go.sevenfigureagency.com/dream-team.